Well, to ask as a follow-up question from that, the other point that you've repeatedly emphasized in the course of these Friday webcasts is that with what the British Empire is attempting to drag the United States and the world into, in the war in Syria, we could find ourselves in a extinction warfare with World War III. And Obama's role in pulling the United States in that direction threatens the existence of the human race. There's been an intensive war going on inside the United States over the past several weeks, which has heated up really past the boiling point, where General Dempsey and the Joint Chiefs of Staff have done everything they can to hold the United States out of a military intervention in Syria, while the crowd around Obama has pushed it, along with John McCain and others of that sort. Over the weekend, we found ourselves right on the brink of a total war, where the Israeli military went in and did 2 airstrikes inside the territory of Syria, one of them right outside Damascus, which could have been the spark to set off a total war. Now, right after that, the United Nations announced the preliminary findings of an investigation, Carla Del Ponte, of the allegations that the Assad government had used chemical weapons. And they said, well, in fact, chemical weapons were used, but not by the Assad government, but by the rebel opposition. And so the entire argument of the Obama red line and everything was thrown out the window, and the remembrance of the Iraq weapons of mass destruction, Tony Blair's line, was on everybody's mind. Now, immediately after that, John Kerry went to Moscow and had a meeting with both Vladimir Putin and Sergei Lavrov. And coming out of that meeting, to the surprise of many, it was announced by both Lavrov and by Kerry that Russia and the United States would be convening a new international conference on Syria by the end of the month in order to try to create a transitional government comprising representatives of both the opposition and Assad's government. And so this was obviously a surprise to the people who were convinced that the Obama administration was right on the brink of going in with a military intervention. The remarks that Kerry made on that event were also curious. He said that this is not just the announcement of the convening of an international conference on Syria, but this is also the observance of the collaboration between the United States and Russia on Victory Day, or the anniversary of Victory Day, coming together to defeat fascism in Europe. And he said that Sergei Lavrov and him agree that it's important for the leadership to be demonstrated as an alternative to perpetual conflict. I know that the future of the United States and Russia holds great potential because, despite our differences, very common strategic interests unite us. These are big issues on which issues like war and peace hang and fall. Now, what is known is coming up in less than 1 month. General Dempsey is scheduled to go to Moscow to meet with his counterpart, the head of the Russian military there. What are the implications of this situation, or the potential implications?
Well, this is going to require a little more delicate handling, because it's not a simple case. And you cannot, what I'm going to say now is not speculation, it's science. But we live in a society in which people are trained to believe that you can't know the future, when the reality of humanity in particular, mankind's ability to function as humanity, depends upon the ability of some people in society to foresee the future. But foreseeing the future is not foreseeing a certainty of a specific event. What is specific is the fact that the impact is there. The impact which causes the change is there. And therefore, this is where I've had my career, shall we say. was on this issue, on economic forecasting, for major economic forecasting of nations or national economies. And I've never been wrong. And all my opponents have usually been very wrong, because they base themselves on the idea of that knowledge of the presence, like a mechanical outcome of what happened today, determines the future or predetermines the future, nothing else. And whereas the truth of the matter, which is my specialty in this case, is that forecasting is the most essential characteristic distinguishing mankind from monkeys. The ability to forecast the future. Everybody else is making wild, silly guesses on one side or another. Now, what we're dealing with, you have to look at this situation from that standpoint, my standpoint, not this usual crap. We're in a situation where, let's take the case of Israel. 2 Israeli attacks against Syria, not inside Syria, otherwise. Right? This created a situation, together with that idiot of the Republican Party representatives in this country, who set into motion a process which could have led to really a global thermonuclear war. The potential was there. How far, how many steps further away it was, we don't know. But we have to look at things in those terms. What are the terms which we have to consider? What are the probabilities we have to consider? What are the not just probabilities, what are the characteristic changes from the past which you have to deal with in dealing with the future? And so what has happened is you've got a situation where with Dempsey's intervention, but Dempsey's intervention was actually a reaction against something. It was against the possibility of what these guys agreed to try to avoid. So therefore, we are in a situation where I can say definitely we are on the edge of hell for humanity. And we'll get it deep. The Israeli involvement, because of the connections of the Israeli organization in respect to these matters, was something you can't touch with. Nobody will want to touch with the Israeli question. Therefore, what they were doing in drawing the Israelis into this Syria operation, they were really setting off the possibility of a thermonuclear war right away. So that's the kind of situation we're in. We're in a situation where if we tolerate what Obama represents, and he's now the key figure to watch, if we tolerate Obama, we probably are all going to be dead. Because we're in a situation where you get thermonuclear weapons, you're almost as good as dead. So therefore, we were getting close to the point down the line where we were marching toward thermonuclear war. And therefore, what has happened means that people who were not so nice, in my opinion, have acted together with other people who are less unnice, and they have realized that we cannot allow this to happen. They all understand you cannot cross that line. That line is the thermonuclear line. And if Obama stays in power, it's thermonuclear. But Obama is only the Queen's missionary. So that's the way you have to look at these things. You cannot, you can forecast the future. I've done it often. It works. Most people can't. Most forecasters are simps. They just cannot work. So, but I cannot know the future with prophecy. I can prophesy in the sense of knowing what the future holds for us. But I can't predetermine what the result will be. I can tell you what will be the case, but I can't tell you what will be the result. And our job is to, first of all, understand the future. Understand what the potential is. That's number one. But on top of that, you've got to do something to make what you see possible happen.